Good morning, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour, guys. You're in for a real treat. One of the few people on the internet with a sharper tongue and quicker mind than myself, Dr. Gad Saad, author of The Parasitic Mind. And Gad, you have a new title, which I am very excited to talk to you about because you and I have been discussing off air and on air a little bit your attempts to flee what I refer to as the shithole of Canada. I say there's two types of countries on earth, America and shitholes, only half tongue in cheek. And now, this is quite wordy, but the visiting scholar at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom, University of Mississippi. That sounds like a title President Trump would come up with. Is that fair to say?
It's funny you say that. Well, first, it's so good to be with you again, Michael. Thank you for having me on. The first time that title was ever announced was about maybe 10 days ago on Primetime with Jesse Waters, and you can go and check the clip. As he read the title, he said something to the effect of, "This might be the greatest academic title I've ever heard." So let me tell you, Mississippi is pretty happy that people are loving the title.
Yeah, so let's talk about those circumstances because I've talked about this a lot. I have been a huge fan of Canada as a New Yorker. Going to Toronto was like visiting a school play version of New York City. There was an earnestness, there was a charm to it. I really enjoyed it immensely. Then I went to Montreal. It blew my socks off. We went back. I do these road trips with my friends. So many wonderful things I could say about the country and the people. And then COVID hits, and it was some kind of miasma or something that encapsulated the country. Every Canadian I've talked to, I just had dinner the other night with George St. Pierre, Canadian MMA artist, considered one of the best of all time, one of the greatest people, just really cool dude. And I asked him, and I've asked you, I think I've asked this of you as well. How is it that a nation full of frontiersmen in an inhospitable climate becomes so cucked? Like you teach, your evolutionary science. This disproves it. Aha, we got you.
It's back to the drawing boards for me. My whole academic career has been a facade. Look, not to forgive me for plugging the books, but the answer to your question is called The Parasitic Mind plus
Right.
Suicidal Empathy, right? And let me explain for our just to actually be serious. Let me explain what each of those two books cover, because it exactly answers your question of how could Canada become this new version of Canada. The parasitic mind talks about what happens to our cognitive system when it is parasitized. And so, just to explain very quickly what that means. So, we are a thinking and feeling animal. So, the parasitic mind talks about the thinking part, and suicidal empathy talks about the feeling part. So, let's begin with parasitic mind. So, if you look at the wood cricket, an actual wood cricket, it abhors water. It doesn't want to jump in water. When it is parasitized, when
Yep.
its mind is actually parasitized by a hairworm, the hairworm needs the wood cricket to jump in water, merrily commit suicide in order for the parasite to complete its reproductive cycle. So it has hijacked the brain of the wood cricket in its service. And so that was my epiphany for using that model to then argue that there are parasitic ideas that could turn us into wood crickets. So that was the parasitic mind.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
ask a question?
please.
Have you seen the videos of the praying mantises being put into
Of
water?
course.
So for people out there, we'll put up a little picture. You take a praying mantis, which is a very alpha apex predator in the insect kingdom. I've caught one as a pet, and when you make eye contact with that thing, it has an intelligence. It's very disturbing. And people take it. It's got a slender abdomen. They put in water, and all these hairworms come out. And you would think volume wise, it's not possible. It's like CGI, and they just keep coming out, keep coming out, keep coming out. And it's to your point that they
Exactly.
want to go in the water so they can reproduce. Parasites often have many stages, which evolutionary is just amazing that it takes like 5 steps for this thing to reproduce. It's crazy.
Oh, I mean, once you, so I did obviously a big, deep dive into the field of neuroparasitology. So parasitology is simply the study of host-parasite interaction. So a tapeworm is a parasite, but it is parasitizing my intestinal tract. Neuroparasitology is a
Right.
subfield of parasitology where the parasite needs to end up in your brain, altering your circuitry to suit its interest. So Toxoplasma gondii is a parasite that many people might have heard of, right? The mouse that is infected with that neuroparasite loses its innate fear of cats. It actually becomes sexually attracted to the cat's urine, which is not a really good, mating preference to have if you're a mouse. And so that's what I was doing in the parasitic mind. But then to complete the story of how you have Canada going from what it used to be to what it is now, for me to fully parasitize you, I have to not only hijack your cognitive system, but your emotional system. So our emotions have evolved to solve very specific evolutionary problems. So the reason why we have romantic jealousy, for example, for example, men experience great sexual territoriality. It's because we are afraid of paternity uncertainty, right? We are a biparental species. I don't want to spend the next 18 years raising a kid that turns out to be sired by my gorgeous gardener. And therefore, we evolved the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral systems to thwart that problem. In this case, I get very, very jealous and angry if my wife is talking too long and a gorgeous guy is touching her at a party. Okay. Well, but there are many other emotions and virtues that we have, each of which has a clear evolutionary reason for why it exists in that form. So now let's take empathy. Empathy is a perfectly beautiful thing. There are very clear evolutionary reasons why a social species would have evolved empathy. For you and I to have a meaningful conversation, Michael, I need to put myself in your mind and you
That's
in
right.
mine. That's called theory of mind. By the way, autistic children don't have theory of mind. The way that we establish that they are autistic, we give them a theory of mind test, which they very predictably fail. There is no blood test to check for autism, but there is a theory of mind test. So a
Wait,
lot of people, go ahead.
can you just ask them if they would vote Republican, Democrat, or Libertarian, and then 100% accuracy rate?
That is exactly right. And that's why, of course, I refer to AOC as occasional cortex.
Yeah.
Although apparently Michael Savage might have beaten me to that term, although I did come up with that term independently of him. So you're exactly right. Maybe just give them pictures of Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, and if you vote the wrong way, you're an autistic degenerate.
Wait, so can I tell you something about Michael Savage? This is
Yes.
one of the funniest. You're gonna love this story, I promise, and the viewers. I had someone in the audience in the comments yelling at me for years, literally years, let's say 5 years, that how could I have been so mean to Rush Limbaugh? And you went after Rush Limbaugh as he was dying of cancer. I didn't remember this at all. I had very positive opinions about Rush Limbaugh. Certainly, when I was in high school, he was very influential in my thinking. And mocking someone dying of cancer is really not my thing. But he was so insistent. I'm like, maybe he remember, maybe some joke that didn't land. Who's this? And he's just yelling, and he's like, "When will you apologize?" And I'm thinking, like, whatever. And someone replies, "He is thinking of Michael Savage." And the guy pulls up the quote, and when Rush Limbaugh confessed his cancer diagnosis, revealed, not confessed, Michael Savage was like, "Stop crying, you pussy." Just really below the belt,
Wow.
nasty stuff. And understandably, someone was quite offended by it. My God, guy's dying of cancer. This is your moment to take a shot. And it was Michael Savage. And he felt so stupid, this poor boomer. And he's like, "I'm so sorry. There's nothing I can say." So whenever I hear Michael Savage's name, I have to think of that story. It was
But why?
so
I mean,
funny.
morphologically, I mean, you're both irreverent, you're both
Savage
tough.
Malice.
Sorry?
Savage and Malice, they're synonyms.
Oh, in that sense. Okay, I thought that somehow
No,
morphologically. Okay.
the names.
Oh, it's the name. Okay. Wow.
Is that amazing?
That is incredible. Uh, anyways, where
Yeah.
was I in the story? But thank you for that
You were
story.
talking about AOC and autistic
Yeah,
children theory of
yeah.
mind.
Okay. So empathy, when properly regulated, when it activates within the adaptive norms, is a perfectly beautiful thing, right? I want my physician to be empathetic. I want my
Right.
veterinarian to be empathetic. I want my spouse to be empathetic. Marriages where both man and wife in this case, are empathetic, and so therefore it's birds of a feather flock together, are more likely to stay together. So there are endless reasons why empathy is beautiful. But like Aristotle explained to
Right.
us, Michael, 2,000 plus years ago, all good things in moderation, everything in the right time and the right amount onto the right target. So what happens with suicidal empathy is that it is completely dysregulated in several ways. It is hyperactive and it
Mhm.
targets the wrong person, right? So MS-13 gang member is more worthy of my empathy than the
Right.
American vet, right? And so what I basically do in that book is I go through all sorts of both domestic and foreign policies that have led the West down the abyss of infinite darkness. And I show that they all stem from this dysregulated empathy. And so now to kind of wrap it up to your question, while Canada is is stage 4 suicidal empathy. It's not stage 1, it's not stage 3, it's full blown pancreatic cancer.
Well, let me ask this: Is it? I mean, maybe this is being pedantic, but I still, as someone who's a scientist, I think you'd appreciate that. Is it actual empathy? Because I feel like these people who advocate these policies don't really even genuinely want to understand how these people they're advocating for view things, view the world, and feel. They just see themselves as these kind of white knights, and I'm going to speak for them, and they're all angels, and they're just like you and me, but they just wear different clothes. And there's very little understanding of who they're advocating for when push comes to shove.
So I think there's both. So there is
Okay.
the faux suicidal empathy manifestation, and but then there is the truly
Yeah.
genuinely bathing in and I'll give you an example. uh, Although maybe I'm not going to mention her name, but there is someone who is a service provider. Okay, fine. She's a physiotherapist. I hope she doesn't watch this show. I recently had some knee issues, and so I went to see her. And she's a lovely woman, very liberal. She votes for the Liberal Party in Canada. She's very empathetic. And so at one point, as she's doing some ultrasound stuff on my knee, she goes, "Oh, so what? Are you working on any current books?" I said, "Yeah, I'm currently working on a book." I explained suicidal empathy and so on. And she says, "Well, give me an example of that." So I said, "Well, for example, having a completely orgiastic open border policy when it comes to immigration would certainly be a manifestation of suicidal empathy, especially when you're arguing that all immigrants are equally likely to assimilate and
Right. Or
provide some
interested.
exactly." And so she kind of pauses, and I figured that she was going to be unhappy. And I said, you seem unhappy with my explanation. She goes, "Well, I think that everybody deserves the right. Like, there's nothing special about us that I'm paraphrasing her words, obviously. There's nothing that, why do we get to benefit from Canada, but other
Oh
people
my
don't
God.
get to benefit from that?" I said, but what do you mean? I mean, so what would that mean then? I live in a house. There are homeless people. So why don't they? I have sexual access to my wife. There are a
Right.
lot of
Exactly.
sexually frustrated people, right? Life is unfair. And she's like, "No, I think all of those people were perfectly vetted. They don't pose a risk. Everybody does." And so that she wasn't trying to signal to me. She truly was bathing in the infinity pool of suicidal empathy.
Yeah, I read. Do you know who Diane Abbott is? My favorite British politician.
Maybe I know of her, but it's not coming to mind who she is.
Okay, so she is our imagine Kamala Harris with the lobotomy. I'm not even exaggerating. So she was first elected in 1987 to the House. She's the longest serving House female. So she's mother of the House. Once she went to vote, and she had two different shoes on, and they were both the left shoe. So this is the level we're talking. I'm not joking. And they said it was
Really?
photoshopped at first. That kind of level. Just
Wow.
no one's home. And of course, I just recently read her memoir, and she explicitly said there can never be too many migrants because they're just trying to look for a better life. Now, that's factual, right? If I'm in some shithole and I get to go to England and for free I get housing, food, they give them Netflix and they give them a stipend, spending money. Yeah, it is better for me than pretty much anywhere else on earth. So she's not incorrect, but at what cost? And to me, I said this to my friends in the UK. It exactly was this is why I want to have you on. It is suicidal empathy to have. I'm a migrant who just hopped across the English Channel and I have it better than poor people in the UK. That is putting others over your own, and I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Like I can understand, okay, give them some food and a shelter because these are human beings, maybe. And I could understand. I'm Poland. People are fleeing Ukraine because they're getting bombed. Okay, we're not going to just put them in a ditch. I can wrap my head around that in a temporary emergency situation. But these people are crossing the channel from France. You don't get to be a refugee from France to England. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're pretty comparable.
Well, I'll blow your mind even more than that. I was talking to someone where I was trying to, challenge them on sort of their suicidally empathetic stance. And I said, okay, I understand that people don't start, with equal probability of success. But let's take, for example, something that seems to be innate, although some people disagree even about that. Intelligence, right? Some people
Right.
are more intelligent than others. We know that there will be downstream effects on how you score on intelligence in your capacity to be profession A, B, or C. Do you think that that is unfair, or is that part of the natural order of things? And she said, no, that is absolutely unfair. The person who is less intelligent
Right.
didn't choose to be less intelligent,
Right.
right? So so then she literally is arguing that the natural assortment in nature, because it is inherently unfair in not producing identical clones, there must be some mechanism that solves that problem. That's suicidal empathy.
And it's going. I bet you could push her a step further because she would say, even if you did make choices, like I made choices that hurt my life, and you made the correct choices, well, I couldn't have known because of X, Y, and Z. So that, and this is just John Rawls. So for people
Exactly.
who don't know, go read John Rawls. It's one of the dumbest. One of the thing. Okay, it's dumb and smart at the same time because it's dumb because if you sit down and think about it, it's ridiculous. But it's smart that it gives a rationalization for this extreme egalitarianism. And John Rawls posits the view like if you were about to be born, right, and you have, what kind of world would you like? And he's like, we would all like to be in a world where we all had like an equal shot at success. And the point is, no, you're just talking about risk averse people because there's plenty of people who would say, I'd rather have that 1 in 10 shot of being Gad Saad and 9 in 10 that I'm a rando, as opposed to equal shot at anything. So it's very just based. It's a psychological thing, and it completely falls apart in many other ways as well. He also says that like if rich people like better things, like I can't even get into it.
Well,
Just
you're removing personal agency. I mean, imagine
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
what could be worse than an attack on human dignity than to say that anywhere that I end up ultimately can't be due to my personal agency. Like, right?
right.
I remember I had a very pretty girlfriend when I was about 20 or 21 years old. We had met in the summer. I think this is the first time I ever tell that story publicly.
Oh,
We had met that summer at some nightclub, and I wasn't much of a nightclub guy. But then when school started again, and therefore I have to be studying for my differential equations exam and my artificial intelligence exam, I was no longer as interested in hanging out at the nightclub, and I ended up splitting with her because I took the very difficult decision that she was going to bring me down. And, a 20 or 21-year-old guy who has access to a really gorgeous
yeah,
girl,
of course.
that takes a lot of discipline. Well, I want credit for that, right? It was
That's
my
right. Yeah.
personal agency, right? And so, no, it's not. John Rawls is not going to remove that from my sphere.
Guys, traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat, and it can lead to acne, allergies, stuffy noses, and it is just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning antibacterial bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. These fabrics were inspired by NASA, so they're thermoregulating and they're designed to keep at the perfect temperature all night long. And they're infused with silver, which prevents bacterial growth. No more gross odors, except for you. You know who you are. Miracle Made sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. Stop sleeping in bacteria. It can clog your pores. It could cause breakouts and acne. So sleep clean with Miracle Made sheets. You can upgrade your sleep. Go to trymiracle.com/mouth to try Miracle Made sheets today. And if you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you get over 40% off. And if you use our code MALICE at checkout, you get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20%. But wait, there's more. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code malice. Get your free 3-piece towel set. Save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. So, one of the things I'm very curious about is you are one of the best people out there at taking complex scientific ideas and bringing in examples, having this wealth of knowledge and breaking down in ways that anyone can understand. Like, is this a function of being an academic and teaching all the time? Like, how did you learn how to be so
Oh,
articulate?
what a lovely question. Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. No, I don't think it's a function of being an academic. I think academics actually exhibit the opposite pattern, which is, which, by the way, is one of the reasons why most of them are very much stay in your lane, right? They know a lot about organic chemistry, but they can't come on Michael Malice's show and actually be interesting about art history or about, uh, Ocasio-Cortez, because they know a lot about one thing. So no, I really think it's, if I were to try to identify an innate quality that I have that allows me to do what you said, well, there are two, I think. Number one, it's I have a very synthetic mind. By synthetic, it means that I try to find synthesis across
Mm,
domains. And it really, and one of the reasons why E.O. Wilson, the Harvard biologist, is one of my favorite intellectuals. He recently passed away, and I greatly regret I never had a chance to have him on my show and so on. He wrote a book in the late 1990s, Michael, called consilience. Consilience is a word that very few people know. It refers to unity of knowledge. So when you say, for example, that physics is more consilient than sociology, it's because physics has some, a tree of knowledge where there is an organized, coherent set of core facts that we agree on. And so he was trying to argue that there is a way by which we can create consilience across the natural sciences and the social sciences and the humanities, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Well, when I read Consilience, I said, "Wow, he is articulating exactly how my mind works." That's why I am a natural interdisciplinarian. Now, in academia, they would tell you to do exactly the opposite
right.
of
Okay.
what my career is. You publish in these four journals and you never deviate from it. Whereas I've published in medicine and in politics and in marketing and in advertising and in evolutionary theory because I'm just a child who's curious about all sorts of intellectual landscapes. So I think that's the first issue. The second one I would say is I think I have sort of analogical reasoning on overdrive. So whenever I'm trying to explain something, I always look for an analogy that demonstrates that point. And there are a few scientists that one can think of, Kepler would be one, where they used analogical reasoning to arrive at a big breakthrough. So I think if I take those two qualities and then apply them, that's how I end up with the kind compliments that you gave me.
Well, speaking of academia, I'm so happy that you're making this transition and coming to the States. You and I have been talking about this for a long time. I felt with great confidence. I know you somewhat well that this was not, that's something you would not regret. So, can you please tell? Now we're gonna have to deport you because we're full. So get the f out. Go back to where you came. But for now,
Like Lebanon or Canada?
we'll figure. We're sending you to Uganda, where you.
With the father of the year.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Sorry, I'm gonna have to call ICE as soon as this interview wraps. Please tell viewers the circumstances made your life change.
Thank you so much for that question, Michael. So as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm at University of Mississippi at the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of Academic Freedom, not American freedom, as you mentioned. But although part of American freedom is to have
Yes,
academic
that's
freedom,
true.
so maybe it's not such a bad thing that I mixed up the two terms. Um, Unbelievable place. So last February, well, it actually started a few months earlier. I received a message from someone said, "Hey, we're big fans. We'd love to chat." and we did. And then they said, "Hey, why don't you come down to Oxford, Mississippi?"
Right.
I'd never. I mean, of course, I knew about Old Miss and so on, but I'm like, is this going? You kind of have the stereotypes. Is it going to be a place where I could fit in and so on? I got to tell you, Michael, I got there, gorgeous town, very literary town, right? William Faulkner is there. So they, in the central kind of square of Oxford, there's I think maybe 4 or 5 bookstores,
Oh
including
wow.
including an antiquarian bookstore. I'm like, I think I'm home. And then the center itself is led by a director and a deputy director or assistant director. I met those two guys. I was like, oh my God, right? I mean, real academics, very interested in just discussing ideas. Nothing is off the table. And I thought, and I walked around the campus, everybody seemed happy. People didn't seem to be confused by who is male, who is female. I
Right.
thought maybe this is the place for me. And so they made me an offer, and here I am.
Well, can we talk a little bit about the backstory? Because not telling tales out of school, pun intended, you and your university were not exactly best friends. Um, you saw, I'm sure, even more have more information than I do, what they were trying to do to Jordan Peterson in Canada's collegiate system. I think people don't appreciate. I always say that the universities are real villains. I don't think people appreciate to what extent how small-minded and petty and resentful these types are. And if you're someone who has a public voice and it's a public voice that isn't in line with their very specific ideology, you are a problem. No matter how much your students like you, no matter how much they go on to succeed, you're a problem for the university, and they will do everything they can, especially little passive aggressive BS things, to make sure you know it. So, insofar as you could discuss that which led you to go to Mississippi, I'm sure that'd be very edifying to people.
Excuse me, excuse me for my cough. I have a bit of a cold. Maybe you'll edit it out.
You're allergic to the truth.
Exactly. Uh, Look, there are several factors that were problematic at my university, and some you might expect, others less so. So let me kind of cover the wide panoply while trying to stay as diplomatic and charitable as I can.
Gad Saad, diplomat. Yeah,
There
that's
you,
the career path for you.
there you go. There you go. Uh, Look, my university is unbelievably wokeified. I mean, really well beyond what even someone like you who very much understands the ecosystem might expect. So I'll give you a few examples. A few years ago, one group of researchers at my university won a huge government grant, like equivalent to say the National Science Foundation in the US, where the grant objective of the grant was to decolonize light, right? So
Light?
light, the physics of light, the physics of optics, right?
Who
So,
colonized it?
well,
Like,
well, who colonized it? Who are the ones who are famous for the physics of light? They're all white men, many of them heterosexual. That's
oh my
disgusting.
God.
Okay, so you can go on the site. By the way, it's cited in one of my papers, one of my recent academic papers. I also discuss it at length in my forthcoming book, Suicidal Empathy. So there is so taxpayers paid a lot of money to decolonize light, which effectively means to incorporate indigenous ways of knowing in the study of light, because because whatever we know about light so far is incomplete knowledge, if not tainted knowledge, because of the dermatological view of the physicists who espouse those theories. Okay, so that's one.
Well, hold on. We have to pause here because
I
I
knew
mean,
that would surprise you.
I know you swim in these circles, so maybe it's not surprising to you at this point. But for a lot of us out here, I mean, this sounds like even worse than those things that James Lindsay and Helen Plumrose or Pluckrose, whatever her name was, published. It's off the chart. I remember when I was in college, and I took economics 101. I had to take it for my major. I was a business major, Bucknell, and my professor, I forget her name. I remember what she looks like, a gray-haired woman, middle aged. And it turned out she was a Marxist. You wouldn't have known it. You would have thought she was like a left. She did not really come off that way. And part of her feminist Marxism was the idea that since the laws of economics were discovered by men, They were inherently sexist and have to be rediscovered by women. Now, I don't know how having a vagina affects supply and demand, maybe in the bedroom, and certain, as of, you understanding evolution, you can talk about supply and demand in that context, eggs versus sperm. One is a much more
Actually, that's exactly where I would have talked about it. Beautiful.
right, but the law does not change. It's the same, whether you're the supplier or the demander. So, but and the rainbow flag, light is composed of the rainbow, so you could even say it's already LGBT friendly. Um, is this the kind of thing that when you see something like, are you at least on some level like, well, at least they're getting creative with it?
I wish I could be that charitable. All I get is my blood pressure spiking up
Right,
and
right.
saying I need to get the hell out of there. Uh,
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah.
I will end at the end by actually saying something complimentary about my university, not because I want to be diplomatic, but because I just want to be fair and I'm
Yeah,
truthful.
yeah.
Okay? So let's start with the negative stuff. Okay, so we have a project on decolonizing light. Last year there was a 1 day scientific symposium on menstrual equity, and the abstract of the conference of the well not conference symposium one day symposium is that because menstruation is a human right, because the 117 billion people that have thus far existed on earth that knew that there is one sex that menstruates and not the other, that was antiquated science. So now we have to have a 1 day scientific symposium on menstrual equity. And all this is it's not Gad being hyperbolic, or it's the Gad Malice satire. This is real stuff, right? I mean, I've got the reference for it. Okay.
But now I'm kind of curious because there's many juvenile females don't menstruate,
Yes.
and after menopause, obviously women don't menstruate. So you're not even going to have equity within females.
Exactly. Well, I'll give you another example. When you become anorexic, you experience what's called menarche, or in French, you say it's this. Well, it's the shutting off of your menses, right? So you have primary amenorrhea, which is you're a young girl that is yet to have your menstrual cycle, and it is delayed because you don't have enough fat reserves. Or more typically, you've already been menstruating. You're 19 years old and now you become anorexic, and that's called secondary amenorrhea. It stops your menstrual
Yeah,
cycle.
gymnasts have that too.
Exactly. Gymnasts have. So it's usually when you get below a certain fat level, it shuts off your reproductive system. And there's very interesting evolutionary arguments for why that happens. Okay, but leave it aside. So decolonized light, menstrual equity, but now I left you the last
Oh
one.
no,
Okay, you ready?
no, I
In
don't
our
think I am. Because wait, I'm not ready because we haven't resolved two. What is equity? What does menstrual equity look like?
so menstrual equity, for example, it there are men who menstruate,
Okay.
right? And therefore, when you have feminine hygiene products, they should also be in all of the bathrooms
Oh,
on campus, and so on and so forth, right? Okay,
okay.
you ready? Your blood
Now I'm
pressure is
ready.
okay?
Now I'm ready.
120 over 80, you're good? Okay, here we go. So in our 5 year strategic mission plan, university every 5 years, it sort of does a reflection. It comes out with
Yeah,
here is our next 5 years, what we want to
just like
do.
Stalin.
Exactly. Number one, except crazier than Stalin.
Yes.
Number one, the most important thing moving forward is to decolonize and indigenize the entire curriculum and pedagogy. So, what does that mean? I am a pure mathematics professor. Well, how do you incorporate indigenization and decolonization in the study of the distribution of prime numbers? In my case, I teach evolutionary psychology, consumer psychology, psychology of decision making. How do I indigenize and decolonize that? Now, they're not putting a gun to your head and saying, show me, although they almost do because you have to kind of submit a progress report and so on. So I thought, wait a second. Of course, I'm not going to play along. So what's going to happen? There's no way I'm going to try to incorporate indigenous thinking into understanding how sexual selection and natural selection creates, our adaptations. So that would have been another problem I faced at Concordia. Now, you might say, well, but that's true at many Canadian universities. Yes, although Concordia is very much woke central. But now we come to the second problem, uh, which in a sense could be related to wokeism, but not quite. The orgiastic debauchery of Jew hatred.
Okay.
It is astounding. Okay, so in 2002, well before people knew the term cancel culture, Benjamin Netanyahu had tried to come and speak at Concordia. At the time, actually, I was a visiting professor at University of California, Irvine, so I wasn't on campus. But in 2002, 23 years ago, the dynamics at Concordia were such that the prime minister of Israel could be shut down, and they did. Now, that is due to two factors. It's due to the wokeism, right? You could be Joe Smith and you hate the Jews and the Zionists, but it also comes from a demographic reality in Quebec that has resulted in the society getting Islamized at a breathtaking pace, right? And now the question becomes, well, why is that? There are several reasons, but one of them, and it sounds as though I'm going to be facetious and I'm joking, but I really am not. So, Quebec, the biggest threat that Quebec society faces is the eradication of the French language, right?
What?
Yes.
It starts with one missed bill, then another. Now it's calls you ignore, envelopes you don't open, pressure that doesn't let up. Debt doesn't knock, it kicks down the door. But PDS Debt helps you fight back. They've helped hundreds of thousands of people break free. This is your shot. Take it before debt takes everything. There's no minimum credit score required. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money where it belongs, in your pocket. PDS Debt is A plus rated by the Better Business Bureau. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews on Google, 5-star rating on Trustpilot. Why? Because PDS has helped hundreds of thousands of people get out of debt. This could be you. I used to have debt, and let me tell you, it is awful, because whatever you do, whatever you buy, wherever you go, it's always there in the back of your mind, and you don't have to live that way. You're 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free assessment and find out the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/welcome. That's pdsdebt.com/welcome, pdsdebt.com/welcome. Thank you guys for helping out so many people. Let's get back to the show. I thought for a long time the Quebecois and the Bloc Quebecois very much fought for this. It was Trudeau's dad, Pierre Trudeau, who made Canada officially a bilingual country. That's why if you get something imported from Canada, all the packaging is in French and in English. So I thought this was something that in Quebec was very conscious and fought for, and really like a major point of pride.
That it's bilingual?
Yes.
No, but so I'll give you, just to kind of go off on a slight tangent to address your point, there is something called the Office de la Langue Française, the Office of the French Language. It's a taxpayer governmental language police that goes around to ensure that if you have a store sign, the French one is more dominant in terms of
Okay.
font size than the English one. It has to be by law. Your children cannot go to either English or French school. The only way you have the right to send your kids to English school is if your parents had been taught in English. So, for example, I came to Quebec in 1975. My mother had studied at an English speaking school in Lebanon. She passed that right to me. And I can pass that right to my children so that they, even though, by the way, at their school, their English school, they still have to learn fully French. But
Sure.
but I'm not forced to send them to only French school, right?
Okay.
So no, it's not this beautiful romantic bilingual country. The Quebecers are very, very sensitive about uh,
Yeah.
Quebec's, the language. By the way, let me add another tangent before I come back and finish the story about the demographics. So I've been on Joe Rogan 11 times. I've discussed an endless number of contentious issues. Not trying to be contentious, but difficult issues that can get people riled up. I am not joking, Michael, if I told you that the most hate that I've talked about Islam, I've talked about Israel Palestine issues, trans rights, I've talked about anything you want. By far, by orders of magnitude, the most hate I received was the following. But by the way, do you know where I'm going with this? Do you know the story or no?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
No.
Yeah. So this was maybe the 10th appearance or maybe the ninth appearance. It wasn't in my most recent appearance. So I had gone on Joe's show and we were chatting about different summer trips we had taken. So he said, "Oh, my family and I just returned from Greece." I said, "Oh, I must have been close by. My family and I just returned from Portugal." And then I said, "Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't think we'll be moving to Portugal because I can't stand that Portuguese accent, right?" I'm being flippant. I'm joking around.
Sure.
I said, "Oh, but if we're going to talk about ugly accents, Hebrew is a violently ugly uh, language. But
Yes.
when it comes to the ugliest accent that is humanly possible, it is the French Canadian accent. It is an affront to human dignity." My exact words. Now, all right, take a moment to recoup
Wait a
from that
minute.
one.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I think, and I can back this up. I have a very high opinion of your intelligence. I have receipts. Just listen to your talk. You seem erudite. And maybe we need to give you one of those theory of mind tests because maybe you're so opposed to suicidal empathy that you have homicidal. I don't know what the opposite would be, but it's
Masochistic tendencies.
yeah, like you're supposed to be a sadist, not a masochist.
Very true. By the way, one of my nicknames is, Marquis de Sade,
Yes.
Sade. I'm Marquis de Sade, Saad.
Oh
Right?
my God.
Yeah. But anyways, so but
Well, okay,
just
wait, I gotta say something because
yeah.
I had something similar happen because I think this is the first time I was on Rogan, and you never know for people who haven't been done the show. You're there for 3 hours, you leave, and you're like, "What the hell did I just say?" And you can't remember everything. It'll be a throwaway comment, and then the internet takes care of it. And for the next week, this is your life, right?
Oh, it's
So
gonna
for
get much
me, hold
worse.
on, hold on,
Yeah.
hold on, hold on. For me, the first time I was on, I just had a casual comment about how British people are so ugly, and I didn't think it was controversial. Or anything. Oh boy, they did not like that. And then later there was receipts because there was an article about what's the most searched term regarding the British in Europe, and it was why are the British so ugly? That was actually Google came back, so I was vindicated. But please, sir, go ahead
Are
with
you
the.
saying that Keir Starmer is not dashingly handsome?
I think Keir Starmer is pretty good looking by British standards.
Okay, I don't want more hate. I get enough hate. This is
Okay.
Michael Malice who's saying this. Okay, so just for you to know, the term affront to human dignity is one of my typical hyperbolic,
Yes.
humorous Gad things. And I literally took a screenshot of all, not all, a subset of the cases where. So if you love U2, you're an affront to human dignity. You love musicals, you're an affront to human dignity. And on and on. So complete. Probably the one I'm most famous for is my hatred of the Beatles. And so I say, I mean and I actually call it auditory jihad. Okay. So I mean, the most imbecilic moron would understand my humor. Okay, so you ready? So I did exactly like you did. I left the show. Oh, that was a great chat. I didn't even remember the whole thing. I
Right.
get
Of
back.
course.
I get back to Montreal. I have an email from a Quebec journalist. Okay, and he said he basically it's the Inquisition. Explain yourself. And so I was very polite. I said, well, there is this thing called preferences. And some people find Italian to be a beautiful language. I agree. Other people find Dutch to be an ugly language. I agree. I'm not sure there's anything else I can add for you. So the next day, he puts together this article published in the top newspaper in Quebec called La Presse, the press, where Here is this immigrant ingrate who we accepted from the shores of war, and 50 years later, he commits a linguistic genocide against the Quebec people. Okay. For the next 3 weeks, Michael Malice. Now, luckily, we had gone to Southern California, to Newport Beach. I become Quebec's enemy number one. Justice minister, science
No,
minister,
no,
education minister,
no.
not saying, come on, Gad Saad is our most famous export. He's fantastic. They're all, throw him under the bus. Shame, shame. I can't walk in the street. I don't know if the barista who's going to serve my
Right.
coffee is going to go, here's what I think of your French Canadian comment. Hundreds of letters sent to Concordia,
No.
fire the piece of shit falafel seller. What happened to your inclusion and equity, degenerates? I thought we're super empathetic. I made a joke about your accent. I'm now become a falafel camel rider. Yeah.
Wait. Do you know what's even funnier? That if they, knowing if they ever stopped you in the street or yelled at you, they have to yell at you with that accent.
By the way, Michael Malice, I'm fully francophone.
Yeah.
Je parle le français parfaitement. I actually speak it with an international accent. Now, some of the Quebecers will say it's an obnoxious accent. You're in Quebec. Why don't you speak like us? Well, I'm moving to Mississippi, right? I don't now speak English by going, y'all gonna get some fixin'. I mean, right? I mean, I don't suddenly
Not
change
yet.
my, not yet. Maybe in 5 years, inshallah, it will change. So anyways, so okay, let's put aside that story.
I'm
Okay.
dying.
Now let's come back to the demographic.
Sure.
So the French Canadian government thought we need to protect our society from the mean English language. So here's a great idea. If we were to let in hundreds of thousands of French speaking Muslims who eventually down the road, inshallah, they will decapitate us. But before decapitating us, they'll say, Bonjour, monsieur. The decapitation will be happening in French. So, technically speaking, we've protected our linguistic heritage.
Well, don't they say bonjour, hi?
Bonjour, hi, only when they're trying to be bilingual. Some of them refuse the bilingual part, and it's only bonjour. As a matter of fact, some of them will get upset if you address them in English, right? So, for example, sometimes journalists will write to me in French, knowing fully well that I'm fluent in French. I mean, I learned French, by the way, before I did English, right? Because I'm from Lebanon, which used to be a French protectorate. If I respond in English, as with this guy, the guy who wrote to me to explain that was further proof that I was committing linguistic genocide. Because look at the arrogant asshole. I wrote to him in French. I know that he speaks French, yet he writes to me in English. Well, guess what, asshole? My keyboard is in English, and I don't want to worry about the French accents. So how about you F off?
I'm dying.
I know. Infinitely wise, astoundingly handsome, and supremely funny. There's only one problem. Both you and I are height challenged. Imagine if life weren't so unfair that I could have been exactly Gad Saad and 6'2". I owned the world at that point.
Because a lot of times people on social media will tell me, dude, you're almost 50. What is wrong with you? Grow up, get a real job. And you give me comfort knowing that when I get a little older, I'm still going to be the same person and I'm still going to be terrible and obnoxious, even when I'm not trying to be.
Life is short, man. Smile, have fun, be
So,
irreverent, joke around.
so on a technical level, what's the like moving process? Like, do you have that alien a special ability? Is it something easy to do?
Right now, it's a visiting position.
Okay.
So it's a what? So the way it works at my university is I'm allowed my home university. I'm allowed up to 2 years of a leave without pay. So
Okay.
last year I took my first year of leave just because of the orgiastic Jew hatred. It was
Right.
impossible. It was impossible for me to go to campus,
What do you
especially
mean?
if well, well after I already faced a lot of threats prior to October 7th, but after October 7th, where I dared say, hey, I'm concerned about my, family in Israel, that meant that I was supporting the genocide of Gaza. So how do you want me to walk on campus? Everybody recognizes me and knows me. I'm the head Zionist who's committing, genocide in Gaza. And outside my university campus, there is a million keffiyeh clad guys that I escaped from in 1975 when the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was fighting in Lebanon. And now you want me to go through the protests of free Palestine, globalize the Intifada. So if you think that Columbia University was a rough environment, or Harvard, you don't want to come to how it is in Montreal. It's a completely different level, right? Because just the demographic reality. And so I thought, okay, I'll just take a leave of absence. So last year I spent 1 year at Northwood University, which is called the Free Enterprise University. So they're very much, Austrian School of Economics, freedom of economics, freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry. So it was obvious that they'd be a good fit there. And now I'm doing 1 year. I'm extending my leave, and then after that, we'll see what happens.
Wait, so it was actually you haven't been on campus in quite some time?
At Concordia.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, this is you're getting another exclusive. When I go on campus now, just to pick up my mail, I usually will go late at night. My wife will park in the alley. I walk in with big black glasses and a hat. I surreptitiously run to the thing, take out my mail, and leave. Now, I don't mean to imply that on every corner of every place on campus, there's somebody who's going to kill me. But even when I was on campus prior to October 7th, there had been several death threats and so on where I had to walk on campus with security. Now, this is happening in the 21st century in Canada, where, and it's not like I'm an incendiary guy who's ever calling for violence against anybody. I'm basically saying, hey, you know what? Freedom of speech is really important. Freedom of inquiry is really important. No, women can't have penises. Yes, meritocracy is important. All the stuff that most sane people would say, yeah, obviously, no kidding. But that becomes a dangerous proposition. Once you add in the Gaza versus Israel thing, it becomes a keg.
Holy crap! So are you when you're like when were you actually leaving the country?
So for this first year, I go back and forth. So there's still a residence here. Our daughter is finishing high school here, and so on. So I go back and forth to Oxford, and then after that, we'll see. That's all I
Oh
can say.
wow! So you guys know that I wear sheath underwear every single day. I am a sheath underwear model. It's a brand that I love and is near and dear to my heart. And they sent me talking points, and I'm going to read them verbatim just so you see how they understand me. This is literally what it says. I am happy talk about a favorite advertiser on the You're Welcome with Mike Malice. I am talking about sheath underwear. Look, they don't need to send me talking points because this is a product that is near and dear to my genitals every minute of the day, even in the shower. What makes sheath underwear unique is its dual pouch technology. It keeps you cool in the summer, keeps you snug in the winter. There's one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. You try it on the first time, you're like, what is this? And then years later, you're wearing it all the time and designing underwear for the company as well, because that's how much I love sheath underwear. Lots of people are like, is this stuff really that good? Like my friends. And I go, just try it. And they try it. They're like, oh, okay. You really know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, when it comes to underwear, there's like 5 things I know what I'm talking about. This is one of them. If you thought about buying sheath before, let this be your welcome to buy a pair. I promise you, you will enjoy it. They also have shirts. They've got hoodies. They use materials like bamboo and mesh for even more cooling comfort. We need that here in Austin. It gets pretty muggy. It's the sweatiest city in America, apparently, even though we're not full of big fat fatties. Anyway, here's what I want you to do. Go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, and you get 20% off today. Oh, they very helpfully spelled it out for me. MALICE is the promo code for 20% off. And then you will be saying, I am happy talk about a favorite advertiser on the You're Welcome with Mike Malice. I am talking about Sheath Underwear. Thank you, Sheath, for sponsoring the show for so long and keeping my junk nice and tight. Let's get back to the show. So, just on a personal level, is this something I imagine it's disheartening, but I would still love to hear your thoughts on I mean, this is something that affects you personally. This isn't just something academic. It's like the thing with when Charlie got murdered. I mean, I wasn't besties with him, but I certainly knew him. I didn't couldn't watch the video, and everyone advised me not to. They're like, if you haven't seen it, don't see it.
Brutal.
Everyone was calling me like we talk about on Gutfeld. It's going to air tonight. We're recording this on Friday. It does a number on you. I don't have the verbiage for it, to be honest. So, from a personal level, I'd love to hear how this has
Yeah.
impacted you.
Well, I can tell you, I put out two, very raw clips as soon as I had found out. First, when he was shot, but he hadn't been pronounced dead, and then after, when he was pronounced dead, I did know Charlie. I He was a friend. I've been on his show many times. He's been on mine. We've met in person at Mar-a-Lago. We've communicated many times. Just a lovely human being. He truly embodies all of the qualities that you could aspire to have on a human level, right? Uh, he's warm. He's void of ego. He's generous. I mean, he's everything you would hope for. And even from the perspective of freedom of speech and so on, he's not coming with a message of hate. He's saying, "Hey, I want to go to the
That's right.
ecosystem where all of these idiotic ideas spread. Let's talk about it." And I mean, he could be a bit spicy, but probably a lot less spicy than you and I have ever been.
Of course, yeah.
He's very polite. He's very genuine. Listen, my teenage daughter, who's not very political, when she found out the last time that I went on her show, which wasn't too long ago, that I was speaking to Charlie Kirk, it's as if she's going to meet the biggest rock. She goes, "Daddy, can you introduce me to him? Can I meet him?" And so and he was so lovely with her. That's the power of Charlie Kirk, and that is
Wait,
that.
hold on. I'm going to show you something. I haven't. You're going to get an exclusive too.
Okay, go.
So, you know how in punditry, a lot of times there'll be a phrase and everyone gloms onto it. So there were three people. So I read every book I own, right? So when I was on Alex Jones' show, three people had the book with the same title called The Great Reset: Alex Jones, Glenn Beck, and Charlie. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get the set, signed copies of all three. Because if I have to read Alex's book, he gave me a free one. I'm gonna get Glenn, and I got all three. And I have Charlie's right here. And do you know what he wrote to me? I'm not happy to show this, but
Oh,
Charlie wrote to Michael, "We will all be in anarchy soon." And I don't think his definition of anarchy is my definition of anarchy. So
you gave me
it's very
goosebumps.
chilling. Yeah,
It's terrible. But to not to in Arabic, there's an expression where you say Allah la yashabbih, may God not compare. Usually when you're
yeah, yeah.
talking about a calamity like what just happened to Charlie, you don't want to then turn it to you, but so God forbid not to compare. Of course it concerns me because I've always told people, look, 99.9% of the people that ever reach out to me are hugely supportive, right? But it takes one negative interaction. For example, luckily, I've only had one direct in-person threat. Actually, I was walking with my then 10-year-old son. So, knock on wood, you'd like to think that most people are sane. But what happened to Charlie Kirk is a reflection of, not to get professorial, but if it's okay with you, I just want to explain what allows
Yes,
this to fester. So in ethical systems, and I know you're a voracious reader, so you might have heard these terms, but I'd like to link them to freedom of speech. There is what's called deontological ethics and
right,
consequentialist ethics, right? Maybe I've
right.
even talked about this on your show before. Is it okay if I mention it again?
No, but you know why I'm laughing?
Why?
I haven't told the story either. When I was in high school, I have the video. I have to upload it. I took a bioethics class, and
Okay.
the teacher told us there's two things: deontological and consequentialist. And me and my two friends made a video called "Samantha's Decision" about my wife Samantha having shouldn't have an abortion, and it was like a Saturday Night Live sketch because there's a dream sequence where my friend is the doctor telling her, "I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is it's a beautiful baby boy. The bad news is it's an alligator." Or, "I have good news and bad news. It's Siamese triplets. The bad news is they're connected like paper dolls." And he takes out the paper dolls. And we got a C minus, has little or nothing to do with abortion. So when I hear deontological or the other one, it takes me a consequentialist.
Consequentialist.
It takes me back to that high school class and my worst grade. Sorry.
But see, I love these unexpected
Yes.
bridges, right?
It's fun. Yes.
I mentioned those words. You take me back to your skit in high school. That's the beauty of having these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
May Charlie Kirk's spirit live on forever. So deontological ethics is an absolute statement. It is never
Right.
okay to lie. That's
Yeah.
deontological. It is okay to lie if you want to spare someone's feelings. That's a consequentialist statement. Now, for most things in life, as I repeatedly try to explain to people, it is perfectly reasonable for us to be consequentialist. If your
Yes.
wife asks you, "Do I look fat in those jeans?" and you want to remain married, then you put on your consequentialist hat. You say, "You've never looked more beautiful." Maybe you lied a bit, but you're sparing the feelings of someone that you love, right? You don't have to be brutally honest, say, "Actually, I'm seeing a lot of cellulite, sweetie." Okay, right? That's not a pathway to a happy marriage. Okay. But when it comes to foundational principles that have made the West the great
Yeah.
society, freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry, presumption of innocence, those by definition have to be deontological. So the minute I say, I believe in freedom of speech, but once I put the qualifier, I'm sinking into consequentialism. So what the guy who killed Charlie Kirk was bathing in, he was bathing in a misfiring of consequentialism because he's saying, of course, I believe in freedom of speech, but not for monsters like Charlie Kirk. And therefore, if I take him out, it is perfectly morally justified, which, by the way, this is precisely why there was a rupture between Sam Harris and I, right? I mean, I wouldn't say Sam Harris and I were the greatest of friends, but we knew each other. We've gone to dinner. I had been on his show. We've communicated. But once I saw the level to which he had sunk in consequentialism, yeah, Brett, yes, of course, presumption of innocence is great, but not for Brett Kavanaugh, right? He's not deserving of that because, after all, he's not accused of a crime. It's just a job interview. Oh, of course, I believe in freedom of speech, but not for Donald Trump during his first term. Cutting him from Twitter is perfectly reasonable because he's an existential threat. Yes, of course, I believe in journalistic integrity and truth. As a matter of fact, Sam Harris, wrote a book called Lying, where I talk about the virtue of being truthful, but it doesn't apply to lying about Hunter Biden's laptop, because in this case, had you not lied, Orange Himmler would have come to power. Well, there's nothing that I despise more than inauthenticity. So I face this conundrum, Michael. Do I stay loyal to him because I know him, or do I take off the gloves and I come after him? I chose the latter. He ended up kind of severing our relationship.
Yeah. Do you know where this comes from? In my opinion,
Go ahead.
Karl Popper.
Oh, okay.
So
Go.
Karl Popper, whose first book he's a 2-book series called The Open Society and its Enemies. And when I was in college, there was a pamphlet called Laissez-faire Books run by Andrea Millen Rich. And it was all books for a pro-liberty perspective. And some of them are much better than others, I can assure you, as I'm sure you can imagine. And some they just had there all the time in the catalog. Economics in One Lesson, I can recommend without reservation to everyone, by Henry Hazlitt, masterpiece. And one of those books was Karl Popper, Open Society, Its Enemies. From the title, first book is against Plato and his totalitarianism. Second is Hegel / Marx. And after all these years, I'm like, you know what? This is something that's been resonating in the back of my head. I'm going to read it. And then I look, forward by George Soros. And that's where the Open Society comes from. I'm like,
Of course.
Andrea, we may have taken a detour here. I hated it. But Karl Popper had this idea of, I believe in free speech, but there are certain ideologies that, if allowed to fester, would abolish free speech, so it's okay to censor them. It's like, well, then maybe you believe in free speech as a preference, but you don't believe free speech in of itself will guarantee a free society, so you don't believe in it fully. You just kind of like the clothes.
That's the paradox of tolerance.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually referenced that in the parasitic mind. Uh, but I'm gonna do a little other detour. Do you know? Because this is gonna relate to George Soros and then to some extent Popper, but more Soros. Uh, you know about the grooming gangs, of course, in Britain, yes?
Oh, I'll tell you because I've told it before, and I'll tell you again.
Yeah.
So I had a big part to play with this, or a little part. I'll take whatever credit I had. December 31st, 2024. So 9 months ago, I'm on Twitter because I have no life, and I see the police reports, and my jaw dropped because in my even writing a book, The White Pill, about the nature of evil, I thought grooming gang. They're these guys in their 20s who find girls who are teenagers, and they persuade them to be their girlfriends, and they're underage, and it's this kind of gross thing happening in Britain. That's what I thought because that's what the term implies. And then you read the police reports, and I encourage people. I'm not going to even repeat this because I don't want to get demonetized. Go, and I don't even paraphrase it. Assume I'm lying. Assume everything I'm saying is a lie. Go read it for yourself, please. And you read what's happening to these children, and you're like, this term was consciously chosen to be deceptive. And I lost it on Twitter. Elon saw my tweet. He lost it. And then they started talking about it again and tried to force an inquiry, and labor shut it down. So yes, I'm very familiar with these so-called rape and torture gangs.
Thank you for your contribution to the cause. Look, I posted. There's one. I mean, there are many, many cities where these grooming things were happening. One was called Huddersfield, which is a small town in England. And there is what's called the Huddersfield 20. These are 20 guys who had been the perpetrators of these. I mean, really, it's impossible to imagine the stuff that they were doing. And so I took their name. This is from official sources. It could be the Telegraph or the Spectator or BBC, the police reports, as you said. And I put their name on Twitter, right? And so I'm going to summarize their names. You ready? Okay. Muhammad Ahmad Muhammad, Ahmad Ahmad Muhammad, Muhammad Mahmoud Muhammad. Okay. So I put this up, and in my typical style, I said, well, I'm not smart enough to have the kind of big data analytic brain to be able to see what is the unifying theme across these 20 guys. So now I'm going to ask you to see if you can guess how it's going to go back to George Soros. Do you know who was the real culprit of the 20 Muhammads ganging your daughter?
Who?
It was the Jews. What do you mean? Come
Well, of
on,
course.
Michael. And why was it the Jews? So now link it to George Soros. Can you link it?
Well, George Soros wants to destroy England by importing Muslims.
Exactly, because he is an acolyte of the open society. George Soros is a Jew. So, hey, you Zionists, chill. Is it chill? No, shill, not chill.
Chill. Yeah,
Shill.
not chill.
Right. Zionist shill, Gad Saad, what a hypocrite you are. It's not the Muhammads to blame, it's the Jews. And so then I created a new mathematical equation. It's called Muhammad plus Muhammad equals Mordechai. When three Muhammads gang your daughter, it's really Mordechai. But if you want to stay with the letter M, it could be Moses. But it's not the Muhammads. They don't have personal agency. It's really George Soros with his G stuff that caused the rape of those girls. So even for the guy who's been doing this for decades, even for the guy who wrote The Parasitic Mind, my heart sinks because I say the people who wrote this to me are people that walk amongst us. If I can't get you to point to the right culprit of who raped your daughter, how can we win this battle? It's always the Jew that does it.
I I made a point not to look at social media in the wake of what Charlie happened to Charlie. I didn't want to see the video, and I didn't want to see the hot takes, and I didn't want to see the celebrations. I was like, I'm not going to be able to handle. There's not going to be a benefit. There's going to be a downside. And just this morning, we got Gutfeld yesterday. I got people to laugh, which I was very proud of because I think that's what you did. I'm like people. I said people watch this show to laugh. I said, when you guys booked me for September 11th, I had all these 9/11 jokes ready, but now they seem in bad taste. And when I got the boomer audience to laugh at that, I'm like, okay, we're doing good. And then we had a very, very good show. So today on the flight back, I was looking at the mentions, and one of the comments was, it took us 48 hours to figure out that Charlie was murdered by the U.S. government at the behest of Israel. And I'm like, why did it take you that long? If that's always it takes you 1 second. That's always the answer. I
Well,
don't even know the mental gymnastics.
well, if
And
just to add to your point, so have you heard of my game 6 Degrees of Jew? I think you could imagine, right? It's
wait,
based
well,
on
because bacon is trafe.
right, right. So I mean, yes, people relate it to Kevin Bacon, but there is actually a scientific phenomenon called the small world problem. And actually,
Okay.
the guy who developed it, I mean, the original guy was, I think, Stanley Milgram of
Oh,
Milgram
yeah,
experiment
Milgram
fame,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
right? But, although it was another set of studies, but the guy who really one of the guys who popularized it is this guy called Duncan Watts, who was actually at my alma mater when I did my PhD at Cornell, and he was there, but in a completely different department. And he wrote a book called The Small World Phenomenon, which you could see where that's going, whereby as long as you're not talking about a closed society, it's an undiscovered society in Papua New Guinea that literally has no connection to anybody in the world, you could connect any two people on earth in fewer than 6 steps.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Okay. And so I took that principle from that field is called sociometry. It's coming up with quantitative ways of creating a measurement of social networks. And I then, using kind of a form of analogical reasoning, came up with the 6 degrees of Jew, which is I give you any calamity in the world, you have up to 6 illusory causal steps to blame it on the Jews. And so I can give you a different level of difficulty this game. So here's a tough one. I'm going to take you to sort of level 4. An Amazonian frog just died in the Amazon. Blame the Jews. Go.
Okay, so it's going to be caused. Oh, that's easy
Okay.
because
I'm
some
going to
of the
count the steps. So go ahead.
I could do it in one step
Wow.
because the rainforest is being deforested at the at behest of international companies who are converting it to farmland, and obviously, if it's an international company, it must be run by Jews.
You, sir, are a master of you just got a black belt in 6 degrees of Jew. Very well
There you
done.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't even have to look up which company it is or who runs it. It's clearly, and if it's not run by a Jewish CEO, that's how you know it's really run by the Jews because
Exactly.
there's a cover story.
If every single person who sits on the board of the directors is of Irish name, wink, wink, McAllister is really the code name for Mordechai Rubenstein. So
Right.
this doesn't prove that it's not run by the Jews. It simply proves how shape-shifting those fuckers are.
It's great. That's amazing.
It's fantastic, right? So anyway, so why were we talking about we were talking about the open society. Yes. Are there any parentheses that I didn't cover?
No, I think we got it.
We've
So,
covered a
Gad,
lot.
we have to shut it down. The goyim know. We're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Honestly, and maybe it's not a you don't like this answer. I just love the positive camaraderie, right? I mean, I think you're sort of a smiley guy. I'm a smiley guy, so that wouldn't be such a surprise. But it's always fun to talk about very serious topics with the right kind of spirit. And so I know that when I'm going to go on Malice's show, that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to talk about very serious things, and we're going to feel sort of happy having done so. That's the best part.
You are welcome.
Hey, it's James Altucher. I've been an entrepreneur, investor, best-selling writer, stand-up comic, and whatever it is I'm interested in, I get obsessed. Yes, it's led to success, but it's also led to such heartbreaking failure. I have failed more times than I can count. I wish in my life I had had people to talk to. That's why I started the James Altucher Show and bring on some of the most brilliant minds in every area of life. People like Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban, Danica Patrick, Gary Kasparov, and I wanted to find out exactly how they've navigated the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, just raw stories and real advice. I've talked to 1,500 of the most amazing people on the planet. So if you want to learn from the best and skip the same old canned interviews, we're all about helping you find your next big idea, level up your thinking, and ultimately to choose yourself. So let's do this together. Subscribe now to The James Altucher Show.
This September, CBS hits are streaming free on Pluto TV.
I'm coming in hot.
For this month only, you can watch full seasons of the CBS shows you love. From the courtroom drama of Matlock to the heroics of Fire Country. Go back to where it all began in NCIS Origins, or watch the hilarious hauntings of ghosts, all for free. Full seasons of the CBS shows you love. This month only on Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.